All right, Tyson, we are live. I should say Coach Springer. Hey, good morning, everybody. Justin Newby again. I got the privilege this morning to steal Tyson or Coach Springer away from his regimens of his busy day to come talk to us real quick. I thought it'd be pretty special to get a former Washington wrestler who's now coaching at an NAIA college out in Hasting, Nebraska, to jump on and talk to us a little bit about recruiting and mental toughness and what he looks for in athletes that he's getting ready to offer scholarships to or whatnot. But Tyson, before we jump into that, there's some big news on the Washington front that I wanted to cover real quick. That's cadet duels that, formerly in York, Pennsylvania for the last 3 years. They did a fantastic job in Pennsylvania. It went up for bid. I believe there was 8 or 9 states that bid on that tournament, and Spokane, Washington won the bid. We found out Friday afternoon. We made the announcement Friday night right before the Basin Brawl there in Moses Lake. What an exciting time for us to be able to host such a great event, the national event. So that's probably the biggest news of all. So membership, we'll be calling on you to help us out a little bit. It's going to be held there in Spokane, Washington, at the Convention Center, June 13th through the 16th. I believe that's the dates. So
that's awesome. That's awesome for you guys. Is that freestyle and Greco, or is it just one sport, or is it both? How do they do that?
Freestyle and Greco. Yep. So we're gonna. The goal is to put 2 teams in freestyle from Washington and 2 teams in Greco. So we're gonna double our numbers, get more participation, get more cadet level wrestlers out there, preparing for Fargo and other events down the road. So,
that's awesome.
Pretty exciting.
How many teams go to that thing? I mean, how many states, I guess, go to it?
In the last couple years, we've averaged 31 to 33 teams in that event. So I think 27 states. Some states bring 2. So right. 27, 28 states, 31 to 33 teams, depending on the year.
Yeah, always good to promote some good wrestling in the state of Washington. That's good.
Well, and the exciting thing is having it here on the West Coast. I can't remember the last time we've had a national event over here. I think it's been over 14 or 15 years. I think Craig Lamont said in a meeting a while ago, but don't quote me on that. But I was talking with Nathan Williams from Hawaii. They're working on putting a cadet team to come to Washington, wrestle in the duels, and then go right down to Pocatello to the Western States Championships that we run down there. We're going to be talking to Alaska. I mean, these states have never participated in cadet duels. And so now it's going to give these guys an opportunity to see way more competition than what they see in Pocatello. So we get Alaska, hopefully get Hawaii, obviously the states like Oregon and Idaho, and, hopefully Rich Vasquez and Rich Marino, if you guys are watching, in Montana, you guys will put together and come support cadet duels. My brother in Utah will be here, I'm sure. Get some California teams, Arizona, all the West region. So hopefully they'll all jump on board and come support us here in Washington and make this a hell of an event. So
yeah, it's nice whenever, you look at wrestling, everything's Midwest East, man. So it's expensive to get across the country. So when you get a chance to host something like that, that's a huge benefit for the whole Western side of the United States. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and if you watch what's going on too, if Flo did an article the other day, I don't know if you saw it, about largest clubs or best clubs or what. I think it's the largest clubs.
Was it Tri-Cities or something, or what was that?
What's that?
Where was it? Was it Tri-Cities, or what was the club on?
Twin City Wrestling Club. Okay. But they have 9 that's more kind of like a little league, but we'll take the credit. We love it. But Jay's done a great job. I mean, 533, him and Tony and the crew there, 533 members last year, I think it was. But they kind of go like 9 cities, and they do their little inter-squad league duels, but they do it under their one umbrella, save a little bit of money, keep costs low for the athletes. But when you start looking at the actual clubs that are on that top 25 list, Beth Michelson called me the other day, and she was talking about it. She's like, I saw a lot of teams from Washington on there. I'm like, yeah, it was pretty cool. And she's like, I also saw a lot of teams from Utah. She's like, you Newby brothers are doing some good stuff.
That's awesome.
So I had to get the plug in for my brother. So maybe he'll watch one of my podcasts now.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, Tyson, thanks for joining us. I could talk forever about things going on in our state, but we'll save that for another podcast. Like I said, I just wanted to take 10 minutes of your time, talk to you a little bit about, well, why don't we talk about your journey? How did you get from wrestling in, Monroe, I think, Washington, to coaching in Hasting, Nebraska? I know you've had a few stops along the way.
Yeah, it's a journey in wrestling. It is. If you want to make a full-time career out of it, just like college kids in the Northwest, you kind of have to leave the area. So, I mean, there's not a lot of opportunities. I graduated from Dickinson State, North Dakota after North Idaho, and went back there in 2009 and started helping out there a little bit, and was an admissions counselor and assistant wrestling coach, and got my first opportunity actually at a school right down the road from here called Doane College. And I got to be the head coach there for about 2.5 years before I had an opportunity to go back to my junior college at North Idaho. Jumped on that opportunity to get back home, and you always kind of want to work at your alma mater, so it was a great opportunity to work with Whitcomb and Stanley and those guys. And after a couple of years, you go from being the boss to being back to being an assistant coach. You kind of want to, you like being the head guy, So, had an opportunity. Another school in our conference that I'm in right now is called the GPAC. This school opened up, and I mean, it's one of the nicest facilities in the conference and all of wrestling that I've been to. I mean, our facilities are awesome. We have like a standalone facility, our own locker room. It's like 2.5 mats. We have weight room equipment in there. It's just an awesome facility. So when the job came open, I was like, heck yeah, I would love the opportunity. And it's kind of ended up back out here in Nebraska. So it's kind of a, one of those things where you got to find the right fit for you. And eventually, I'm 35 now. So I'd like to hopefully kind of settle down now, bought a house out here and all that kind of stuff. And I definitely want to, make it a long-term deal out here. So kind of long story short, or short story fast, I guess, but.
Yeah. Well, so are you liking it out there in the Midwest, out there in Nebraska?
Oh yeah, I love it out here. They love wrestling out here. So I mean, it's nice when you can go every hour or every 2 hours. You run into another college that has programs out here. Back when you're at North Idaho or those other schools, you're traveling 6, 7, 8, 9 hours everywhere you go. I mean, you got some close schools, Highline's one, and then in the Montana or stuff like that. But I mean, they're all long trips. So it's like out here, you leave Friday after school at 4 or 5 o'clock. You head to the tournament. Like last week when we were down in Kansas, it was like 200 miles. So we leave after practice Friday, get in there Friday night, wake up, wrestle Saturday, and we're back home by 9 o'clock. So it's just so much nicer instead of getting home at 4 a.m. And it's just, you're always traveling. Here, it's just so much more wrestling out here. So, I mean, that's, it's awesome.
Well, it's like you said, when you were going to Highline, that was close. That's still like a 7-hour drive from.
Yeah, especially with the passing. You never know what the weather's like. So, I mean, half the time you can't get across the pass in the winter. So,
yeah,
definitely nice to be able to, not have to travel as much.
Yeah. So, how many kids do you guys have on your team there in Hasting?
The program's fairly new. It's only been around for about 10 years. So, I mean, which is, starting to be a little bit longer. But, like, we've averaged about 30 kids, I'd say, since the program started. So right now we're hovering about 27 kids. So, we'd like to build it up to about 35. In between 30 and 40 is kind of like the magic number that you'd like to be. So it's not, not too, the school itself is pretty small. It's only like 1,200 students in the school. So it's, it's a pretty small private college.
Oh, okay. Private school. So a lot of your kids from Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas area, or do you have some from the East Coast, West Coast?
Yeah, we got, most of our lineup obviously is from Nebraska, but we got a lot of West Coast kids. We get a lot of California kids, a lot of California junior college kids. Those are been not easy states to recruit, but, easier places to recruit because, those kids have to leave, just like Washington and Idaho and California. And there's just not a lot of opportunities. So you get a lot of those kids from out there that come out west or Midwest. And then we got, a couple kids from Texas and Arizona. And outside of that, that's kind of the bulk of it. Iowa and those states are hard to recruit just because, those kids are passionate about staying in state, and it's hard to get those kids out of some of those areas. So, and there's so many schools between us and Iowa. They have 50 schools to choose from. So it makes it a little bit tougher to get those, when you start going Midwest East.
Growing up in Iowa, it's kind of hard to leave that state.
Yeah. It's crazy. Oklahoma's the same way. A lot of those guys are just proud states, and want to stay in state and fight for their alma maters and the local people, and so it's just kind of it takes one or two guys, and eventually you start getting kids. But I mean, if you kind of got to go where you're, sweet little fishing hole. So you got to keep going there. So, but
it's interesting though, because I grew up in Glenwood, Iowa, and I left, went back, went down to Florida from there. And, ultimately ended up in Washington, but all my high school buddies have, ended up in Denver, then end up back in Iowa. And at the end of the day, yeah, Iowa people, Nebraska people, we're proud people. We love our states. We're proud of where we come from. There's not a lot to do there except for kill deer and drink beer. But hey, that's the fun things in life, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a great thing about the Midwest. It's a wrestling culture, man. So you grow up and all your buddies, you kind of do the same things, and you fish, you hunt, and you hang out. There's a lot more cornfields and bean fields out here, but I mean, not many mountains and all that kind of stuff. You're kind of limited on what you do.
I learned cow tipping's not really a real thing when I lived in Iowa. I tried it, but those things run really fast, and they don't care if there's a fence in front of them if you piss them off. So, we revolted from cow tipping to throwing M80s at them.
Yeah. Yeah, the things you did when we were younger, you scratch your head at it sometimes. But
yeah, kids don't take advice from that. That's bad. Anyway, hey, so let's get to the meat of why we have you on here. I could talk to you for hours, just like your brother. But so when you mentioned recruiting or kids that you have on your team, you have quite a kids from out west. Knowing that these kids have to leave mommy and daddy, perhaps maybe even for the first time. So when you start recruiting, how do you approach that? So I guess we've kind of talked before, so I could maybe back up and say, Justin, Tyson, what do you look for when you start recruiting that process, right? Is it just strictly talent, academics, personality? What is it that you look for as a coach?
I mean, it's really a combination of everything for the most part. When you go to Hastings College is a small private college. It's it's an expensive institution to go to. So the first thing you ask for anymore nowadays is grades. I mean, because we have a lot more academic money to give out than we do athletic money. Just like pretty much all your schools across the country. Wrestling's not a fully funded sport. And very few schools are. You have a ton of wrestling money. So it doesn't matter how good you are. If your grades and ACT scores and all that kind of stuff match up, it's a big risk to take on those kids because you get a very limited amount of money that's actually wrestling. So we kind of have like different pools of money that we pull from. So, I mean, it's makes it a lot tougher to bring a kid in who could be a three or four time state champ. And I mean, that's awesome. But if his GPA is 2.2 and his ACT score is 17, those kids typically don't make it. It's just they go junior college first or stuff like that, or to make it at a private institution where our academics are pretty tough here. So I mean that's the most important thing for me. And then recruiting wise, I recruit a lot off of social media. I don't know how many times I follow a kid on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and it's amazing what these kids put up on there. I mean, you learn a lot about these kids in the recruiting process by just following their social media accounts and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, like I said, it's a combination of everything. We want kids that want to come here for 4 years, not a kid that's going to come here for 2 years and quit, or a kid that's going to leave after a semester or something like that. So we definitely want kids for all 4 years, not just the short period of time. So I guess if that kind of makes sense.
No, it actually, what I just took from that is actually one thing. I used to own a business before I started working with Washington State Wrestling. And when I would interview employees for a position, whether it's a sales position or a IT position or whatever, one of the first things I would do is actually go to their Facebook page. When I first started my first business, it was actually MySpace, but
that was back in the day. That's crazy.
I think I was like 23 or 24, but I'd go to their Facebook page and actually I wouldn't even read their posts. I'd go right to their pictures and try to figure out what type of person it is that's trying to get into our organization and work for us. And you do learn a ton based off their interview and based off the pictures that they post on Facebook, whether or not it kind of goes along with their interview. So kids, be smart on what you post on social media. And Team Washington, I follow a lot of you guys on Snapchat.
Yeah.
I don't know if your parents follow you, but I'm sure some of you wouldn't be posting some of the stuff you do on Snapchat.
Yeah, but even Twitter, just what kids retweet and what they don't even have to say anything nowadays. They just retweet a picture, they retweet. I mean, all this kind of stuff. It's such a, I've heard of so many stories of kids losing scholarships or kids getting kicked off teams anymore because, they put stuff out there. And once it's out there, as a coach, there's not, you can't do anything about it. You can't just take them in the room and scold them. You have to kick them off or you have to do something because it's out there forever. So these kids don't really realize that until it's too late sometimes. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So you deal with a lot as well. When it comes to that recruiting, you look at grades, you look at their social media to try to find out what type of person they are. Yeah. How important is it to win state titles to get recruited in wrestling, you think?
It's always great. Obviously I recruit a lot of state tournaments and I recruit a lot of results. I don't have to, I'm not a big coach that's going to sit there and kids are always asking me like, hey, can I send you film? Or, hey, can I do this? Like, you don't have time throughout the day a lot to just sit there and watch matches all day long. So I like to recruit off of results and wins. It's pretty cut and dry in wrestling. You make it to the state tournament, you're winning matches, you're placing and stuff like that. Usually it transitions to, you could be somewhat successful in college. But for us, it's not about just winning state titles. It's about getting the right fit for the kid and getting a kid that's going to, make it so I don't lose sleep on the weekends. That's going to make good choices. That's going to, believe in the system that we got going on. That's going to be here every single day at practice. That's going to go to class. That's going to stay out of trouble. That's not going to be out partying on the weekends. And that's the biggest thing. So it's about enjoying the process. It's not about, I think these kids a lot of time they get confused on what it means to win and lose and go to college. And, how it is in wrestling, there's nothing professional about our sport really. Some of these guys, like the top 2% go on and wrestle for a while outside of that. And then most kids, after 4 years, they're done.
Hey, so. Tyson.
Yeah.
So I love it, but I have a question from Brian Owen, who's actually watching this podcast. And he just messaged us on our channel, and he wants to know how you already developed a Midwest accent.
Oh, yeah, I've spent some time in North Dakota, and then I spent some time in Nebraska, I guess, already. So I guess you kind of just
Dakota, like a Jersey accent, though. Dakota.
But I spent most of my since 2004. For the most part, I've been out in North Dakota and Nebraska, so it's a couple years back and forth. But Brian, he's funny. Yeah, I don't wear cowboy boots every day like Brian. I seen him at the state tournament last year.
What's funny about Brian Owen? So I met him like a year and a half ago or whatever, and we were at a tournament. And I'm saying this because he was there, and he goes up to Kimo Morrison, and he's like busting him up a little bit because I wasn't at the tournament that he was running or whatever. So Kimo calls me up and he's like, hey, some kid just came up to me and he's real mad that you're not here at this tournament, that he thought that, this executive director, you'd be there. And I was like, well, Kimo, I'm allowed to have a day off once in a while, and I'm like, who was it? And he's like, I don't know, some cowboy with $400 boots that's probably never even been in the mud.
Talking about Brian?
Yeah, talking about Brian Owen. So,
yeah. So,
but anyway, he's a cowboy. He's a redneck. I love the kid. But anyway, so going back to the recruiting process. So obviously I know you guys had some challenges at NIC with kids coming over to college and being there for a year or two and then just missing home, missing a girlfriend, missing, just living in the basement with mom and dad. I mean, whatever they're missing. And then they would bounce. So how do you prepare, or is there really a way to prepare an athlete to, especially from Washington, to leave home and start real life?
I don't know, how do you prepare? I mean, they got to prepare not on the first day of college, that's for sure. You get a lot of these parents that do way too much for these kids for the most part. And then, they expect you to, everything's taken care of for them. So they go to college and they're like, oh man, I got to do my own laundry. I got to wake myself up. I got to, I don't have someone there to wake me up at 7 a.m. for class and tell me when to go to bed and all that kind of stuff. So getting kids prepared for it's kind of tough. It's just, I don't know if there's any trick to it. It's just having, a kid after the first semester, they kind of figure things out. Those first couple of weeks, it's tough on some kids. But our junior college kids it's kind of a different athlete that you recruit than academically. A lot of junior college kids, not all of them, so I can't say most of them, but a lot of them academically got to go junior college first. So that's another struggle, I think, for kids. And some kids that come to these private schools, they got, a little better students and a little better prepared in that aspect of things. So, I mean, I get every kid's different, but it's just kind of, kids just got to, buck up once in a while and just kind of bite the bullet. And usually after the first semester, they kind of start figuring things out. But we do more than coaching here. So the last thing we do here is coaching for the most part, between recruiting and taking care of these kids and making sure they're going to classes, and, there's always something going on. So,
yeah. So, and I know, it's just for the sake of time, like I said, I only wanted to keep you for about 15 minutes, Coach, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about mental toughness, and how we can help our athletes develop that mental toughness. I see a lot of kids, particularly like even my son, right? Getting ready to compete. He gets super nervous, has to pee 3-4 times, in defeat, tears are shed like crazy, which is fine. As a young kid, he's only 12, but as I look to prepare him for the next, 6 years of middle school and high school, I know one of the most important aspects of wrestling is just being mentally tough and prepared. How at the college level are you guys preparing your kids for that aspect?
Like we talked about, we just had our first tournament last weekend, and we had kids win, lose matches and all that kind of stuff. But when you talk to them, mental toughness, I think it's not about, everyone's happy when go lucky, high fiving when you're winning matches, but it's when you lose. Like, I think, and for me, from growing up, I learned a lot more from a loss than I ever did, winning tournaments and stuff like that. It's the kids that you can kind of tell them, it's a process, it's a marathon for us. You start the season, we go September to, March, and, the goal is to prepare yourself for the one tournament at the end of the year. So, and these kids got to be, if you look at some of these guys, like, Kyle Snyder, obviously, look at the example, he wrestles all over the world, and he doesn't lose a lot, but when he does lose, and it's not the end of the world for him. He learned from it, and he gets better from it, and he moves on to the next, next match. You can't dwell on so much on the winning and losing part as you need to enjoy the process of getting better and being students of the sport. Now, these kids nowadays, there's so much wrestling you can do watching flow films online, going to tournaments all over the country, all over the world. We never had that opportunity as kids growing up. My mental toughest was my 2 older brothers beat me up, and then, just making, you got to get tougher. That's kind of how the mentality was in our house. But nowadays, these kids have so many opportunities to get better, and you try to get them away from and worrying so much about the wins and losses as far as preparing for matches and, preparing for the end of the season and learning from a loss and moving on to the next match. So, yeah.
No, Tyson, like I said, we were only going to keep you for 15. There's so much more I would love to talk to you about, but the feedback on my podcasts are they get a little too long sometimes. So I got to learn how to shut my mouth and speed these things up. So I hope we could get you on here again, maybe after your season.
Yeah, anytime.
Kind of talk about your process, your journey, and just pick your brain a little bit more about developing and recruiting and academics. I know when you and I had some private conversations, one thing that you told me, it's very important as a freshman to start preparing for scholarships if you're looking, or even for college. That sometimes some of these kids that you recruit get into academic trouble as a freshman and sophomore, and by their junior year, it's almost too late to make up that ground, and they're leaving money on the table because they can't hit that recruiting, GPA or whatever it is.
Yeah, for sure. It's so easy to drop your GPA, and it's so hard to raise your GPA the longer you go in the, freshman year. You start off bad, you're digging yourself in a huge hole, and, by your sophomore, junior years, you only have so much time to make up those classes, and it makes it a lot tougher. So you definitely have to, starting off with a strong foundation, your freshman, sophomore year of high school, it's huge for giving yourself the opportunity to go in Division I or NAI or wherever you want to go. At least you have the opportunity. But if you wait till, like you said, into your junior year, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I want to go this place, and your GPA is 2.5, like I said, most of these schools, with the graduation rates that NCAAs have and all that kind of stuff now, you have to be not just an athlete. You can't just be a wrestler. You got to be someone that's going to be there for 4 years and graduate and do good in the classroom and on the wrestling mat. So,
and they also have to fill out the clearinghouse, right?
Yeah, we have the NAIA clearinghouse now. So you have to meet the standards of ACT or SAT scores, and GPAs are top half of your graduating class and all that kind of stuff. But the test scores keep switching back and forth. I think the test scores has changed again this year. So like the ACT and SATs, they kind of flip-flop. They scored them differently, and I think this year they changed them back to what it used to be. So, but yeah, all that kind of stuff matters. So I mean, your ACT's got to match your GPA, and like when we have like scholarship grids, so like your GPA equals this, and your ACT or SAT equal this. That's kind of academic scholarship we can give you. So parents that are watching that may not know this, to get recruited, you need to fill out that NAIA clearinghouse or the NCAA clearinghouse. Get your kids to the ACT or SAT and make sure they're getting good grades. A college coach cannot talk to your athlete until you have filled out that paperwork. Correct, Tyson? Well, for us, it's different. We're not NCAA. We don't get that fancy logo on the side of our helmet. So we're NAIA. So like we don't have like the same recruiting rules as the NCAA coach, where they have dead periods and certain times they can talk to kids and stuff like that. We can kind of talk to kids year round whenever we want for the most part. You just can't offer them a scholarship until they're, after their junior year of high school. But so our aspect is a little bit different. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, Tyson. We'll be talking to you probably about 4.5, 5 months after your season wraps up. We wish you the best of luck. Obviously, Washington follows you a lot. Had a few people make comments about Monroe to me already while we were talking.
Good.
Mainly Brian Owen.
Yeah.
But
yeah, their football team's in the quarterfinals this weekend, so wishing them good luck out there. So
who is?
The Bearcats, the football team. They made the quarterfinals of the state championships in football. So
nice.
Good to see them doing good on the football side. So, but our family's kind of turned to the dark side a little bit. We were kind of turned into berserkers a little bit out there with Justin and
Lake Stevens.
Lake Stevens there, so a little bit. So we kind of followed the Lake Stevens wrestling quite a bit. So.
Yeah, well, that's all right. We won't hold that against you. Coach Barnes is great. So,
yeah, they got a great system going on there.
Yeah. So, well, Coach, we appreciate you jumping on, and we're definitely going to touch base with you in about 4 or 5 months after your season. Love to talk to you about that journey as your first year there in Hastings. And, good luck as you compete. And when do you guys wrestle NIC?
We won't see NIC this year, but next year we'll try to – our schedule is set for this year, so we'll try to make it out west maybe next year and go to that Spokane tournament or something like that. So.
Oh, down here at this weekend, Spokane Open.
Yeah, whenever is that this week? I'm not sure what their schedule is, but whenever the hub tournament is.
Yeah, it's the Spokane Open's this weekend. It's right after Bigfoot every year.
Yeah, so that's a great tournament. So hopefully we can make it out there in the future. So it's always good to wrestle those guys, and that way you can kind of keep that recruiting going and see those junior college kids. So.
Yeah. Well, best of luck, Coach, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Later.